I'm going to tell you how I would learn cybersecurity in 2024 that would save you a ton of time. I started my cybersecurity and IT career way back in August of 2013, over 10 years ago. In that time, I've worked in network security, I've worked in the help desk, application security, I've worked in governance, risk and compliance, and vulnerability management. I've worked as a system admin and a network admin. A lot of people say that you have to start at the help desk. While it's the easiest place to start, I wouldn't really necessarily say that it's the best place to start. The reason being is that you can 100% get stuck at the help desk for years upon years, and it can be really hard to get out of that job. What would be a lot better is if you had gained a specialized skill that not a lot of people had, and then you learned how to market and sell it properly within the job market. That is like a concept that took me a really long time to understand. The first thing that you really need to start with is a thing called alignment. That means you really just have to have an interest in doing it. You can make money basically doing anything. So why cybersecurity, and really get clear on why. The first step is that you're going to want to learn the basics of networking, operating systems, IT, cloud. The first thing that you need to know is Linux fundamentals. Do you know what Linux is? Do you know how it differs from Windows? Do you understand the difference between the file system between Linux and Windows? Do you understand the software and the updating process? Do you understand what a CLI is and how it differs from a GUI? Do you understand basic desktop support things? The next fundamental skill is networking. An essential is the OSI model. It does give you a good basis on how the internet operates. The next aspect is cloud fundamentals. So do you understand what the shared responsibility model is? Do you understand the difference between Azure, Google, and AWS? I wouldn't really suggest any IT certifications. I know a lot of people say the A+ is the greatest cert to get. I don't really think it's that valuable unless you are wanting to start, of course, at the help desk, which I would probably avoid that. The next step is that you're going to want to gain a core foundation skill. What do I mean by this? In order to secure something, you have to know what the underlying technology is. What do I mean by core skills? Some great core skills are number 1, computer networking, number 2, the cloud, number 3, software development, number 4, operating systems like Windows, Linux, number 5, data, number 6, hardware, and number 7, even Internet of Things. The list goes on and on. But by specializing in one of these and becoming good at a core thing, it's going to make your life a lot easier when trying to learn security of something. Now in 2024, what I personally would choose and what I'm actually learning right now is the cloud as my foundational skill. Why is that? I don't need to buy any extra hardware. I can literally just practice in AWS. Maybe I have to spend a few dollars, but I can basically just set up an entire infrastructure extremely quickly. And there are tons of open source projects that I can do to hone in on these skills. And then specifically, I would go even deeper into AWS. Now there are 3 different cloud providers: AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Now each one of these is going to be for a different reason. For instance, if you love Microsoft and PowerShell and all of that, then maybe Azure is the way to go. If you're a developer and then you want to rapidly deploy applications, I have heard Google Cloud is absolutely amazing. My personal favorite after playing around with these is AWS, just because it has more functionality and it's not as abstracted as, say, Azure. I actually found AWS a lot easier than Azure. AWS has tons of great projects. For instance, you can go to their website and you can gain that core technology skill pretty quickly. For instance, you could build a serverless web application really quickly. You could create a continuous delivery pipeline. You could even train machine learning models with AI. You could explore topics beyond just security. In the doing of this and gaining that core skill, you're really going to figure out what you like and what you don't like. You may decide to absolutely hate security at this point. For a certification, I would 100% get a certification. I would get the AWS practitioner certification. There are also other paths to go. If you wanted to do networking, then getting a CCNA is a great idea. But if you are not wanting to do networking, then getting a CCNA would be a huge waste of your time. So you have to know what direction you're going in, and there is no one way. Some people may really want to do software security, in which case learning software development is 100% the way to go and the most lucrative. If I wanted to do the cloud, I would probably do mostly infrastructure things and things of that sort, and build infrastructure and secure infrastructure. That's going to lead to the skills that you get. So for instance, I hear a lot of people saying you need to learn Python, but if I was going to learn number one, AWS, and then I wanted to do infrastructure and infrastructure security, then I would want to learn Terraform, which almost no one says. After gaining that core skill in cloud, I would then learn cloud security. Cloud security is extremely difficult for everyone. It's not easy, and it's because there's this thing called the shared security responsibility model, where Amazon and the customer, you, is responsible for security. Then it's just who's responsible for what security? Is this Amazon's responsibility? Is this my responsibility? And then you just have tons of bickering. I would also look at all of the AWS security services. For instance, I can tell you identity access management is going to blow up probably really rapidly, and it's because identity access management is basically the new perimeter, but for the cloud. There's also detection and response, network and application protection, data protection, compliance. So AWS automates the compliance aspects a lot, which is absolutely fantastic. And then I would do a lot of hands-on projects. I do have a list of open source projects that you could do. For instance, vulnerability management and setting up vulnerability management within AWS, it's step by step. So by setting that up, I would learn way more about it than if I were to just study for the certificate, because you'll just learn in depth about these services when you're frustrated that you can't add something because you don't have the proper permissions, and then you really understand the importance of IAM. Also, there's another project, automate audits with AI. I would probably do this too. Now, this is honestly just to get me familiar with AWS. I would also just create my own projects utilizing ChatGPT. This is going to be way more effective than if you're studying flashcards and terms and a lot of theory. To finalize this, I would get the AWS Security Specialty certifications. So certifications do matter, says they can and do help you. And then after learning all of this, then I would also document all of these projects. The reason I say document is because there are several reasons for it. Number one, every job listing that you read is always going to have something saying knows how to document. Will update documentation. Why is that? Because documentation is so important and nobody wants to do it. So just by the fact that you're documenting things really just warms the hiring manager's heart. Usually at most places, the documentation is pretty bad, which is not good. So number one reason. The second reason that it can 100% help you is that at an interview, basically sales, you want to lead that conversation, and by having those projects on your resume, they're more likely to ask you about those projects on your resume, and then you can lead that conversation. Otherwise, you're going to get random interview questions that you may or may not know. You'll have to memorize a bunch of theory, and your life will be significantly harder in those interviews. So the projects and the project documentation do a ton of the work. And you can also just bring it up in an interview as a demonstration tool saying, oh, this is what I did. Or if they ask you a question about something and you're not sure, because I forget things all of the time, you can bring up that document. The next reason is how it looks on your resume is why you want to document these projects. You do have to get through the applicant tracking system. That means your resume needs to look like it's technical, and you have to have all of these buzzwords on it to get through the ATS system. So that's basically how I would learn cybersecurity in 2024. Also, if you're wanting to build out projects and gain extra help, I do have a mentorship program that you you can apply to below. Make sure to check that out, and I'll see you in the next video.